In today's video, you're going to meet Stephen Thorpe. He had a kidney transplant when he was only 7 years old. And if you know about kidney transplants and how traumatic they can be, just imagine that on a 7-year-old kid. Then again, later in life, when he was in his early 20s, he needed another one. And it's more difficult the second time around. And then later in life, again, he needed a third transplant, and even more difficult. But the third one is, in my opinion, just a great story, really a great story. And Stephen, in this video, he's going to explain what he went through, both mentally, physically, and he's going to give some advice to anyone out there who may be faced today with needing a transplant, whether it be kidney or otherwise. But you know what you may be going through, the help that's out there, and if you are going for a kidney transplant, there's a solution that you may not even know about. Enjoy the video. All right, Stephen, so first, again, thanks a lot for sharing the story.
Yeah.
And I have to thank Adrian for telling me about you.
Sure.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
1, 2, 3. All right, I am here with Stephen Thorpe, right?
With an E.
With an A, there you go. And Steve, you are definitely the first guest that I have that has a different type of story. Most times I do stories just because of my work. I meet so many business owners, and their story of resilience always has to be with the business and losing the business or almost losing always around money.
Okay.
And I love, one of my interviews said to me, Rob, when your problem can be fixed with money, it's not really a big problem. Even though when you're going through it, especially if you're losing your house, your business, huge. But he says it's not really a big problem compared to other problems, other challenges. And your challenge is definitely different because it has to do, I'm going to say, with your health is the way I would,
Sure.
with your kidney. So first, just kind of, what do you do? Just introduce yourself. What do you do for a living?
Yeah, absolutely. So born and raised in Houston, married 3 girls, an oldest who has a birthday this weekend, and then twins who will be 6 in November. So we're
nice.
Busy. I work at Morgan Stanley on the investment management side, work with individuals and families.
Nice.
Good business for, being born and raised in a city. And so you end up knowing lots of people. Yeah. So I really enjoy it, talk to people every day. It's pretty comfortable for me.
Yeah,
so,
wow. See, yeah. I'm on the board of the school that your sister-in-law works at, Adrian. Yeah. Man, at one point we were looking for an investment guy. I don't know if they ever told you about it, and if not, we got to blame Adrian. That's a whole other story. That's pretty cool. Okay. All right, so Stephen, your challenge. Your challenge, you've had 3 kidney transplants.
Uh-huh.
What was the first one? How old were you? Do you remember it?
Yeah, so I was born with something they call Eagle Barrett, which essentially is your abdomen doesn't develop properly. And it kind of manifests itself in different ways. And what happened for me is my kidneys underdeveloped, meaning they were there, but the doctors were like, hey, these kidneys aren't big enough to support a young growing boy, let alone a 25, 30-year-old man.
Wow.
So we got to start talking about how we're going to fix this. At least that's the part I understand, right? I was like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
But I had my first transplant about a week before I turned 7. And so we have pictures, at home of my 7th birthday at the hospital. And so...
do you remember that? I mean, is that...
there are parts that I remember. I remember some of the doctors. I remember the doctors very well. I remember the floor, but I don't remember anything like what I was thinking or, right? I don't know if I was old enough to understand. It was just kind of what I was doing.
Yeah. What is that, 2nd grade? What is 7? It's around 1st or 2nd grade, isn't it?
Yeah, I want to say it was 1st grade because, silly reason, but I then went from not being an athlete to being really good after 2nd grade. So I think it was he's healthy now and has all this energy. And so,
holy cow.
Yeah, and that started in 2nd grade. So I think it was probably, towards the end of 1st grade when I was getting that kidney.
So kidney transplant, is it both kidneys at that age, or are they just doing one at that age?
No, so it's no longer a practice in most situations, but they took out my 2 kidneys. Part of the reason being, like, I was so small, and I was getting an adult kidney, so that you get 1. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Wow. All right. So that's 7, and again, at that age, a lot of kids have never really even been to a hospital outside of when they were born.
Sure.
Did you remember school at all? Do you any kids saying to you? I mean, did it affect you any other way other than? In a way, it affected you positively, in a way.
Yeah.
Because before that, though, Stephen, do you remember, were you having any other kind of challenges that you remember at that time? And again, I know you have 2 others, but.
You know, not entirely. I think previous to the transplant, I would get sick kind of often. You know, I do recall, like, fevers middle of the night, and all of a sudden we're packing up and going to the hospital.
Okay.
But I'm not totally sure exactly what. Again, this is 100 years ago, so like the protocols now, it's like, hey, take a Tylenol, right? But then it's like, go to the hospital. So yeah, I don't totally recall, but as far as like at school, you know, another thing that has changed is now we do lab work maybe once a month to look at everything. Back then, they would check you into the hospital for 24 hours to do lab work like once an hour, tracking how your body's metabolizing medicine.
Oh, wow.
So I would miss school, you know, every 4th Wednesday.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And like, but even then, some of my best friends who are my friends today, their parents had explained to them.
Oh, they did.
What was going on. So that's, you know, and it never, well, I will say it affected me in that I never wanted to be thought of as like,
That's what I was going to ask you.
that being who I am.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, that's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about when I was a kid, there was one kid in our PS100. He would be out, and we just knew he was going to the hospital. And then, as kids, you don't know. You ask a bunch of questions.
Right.
You do look at them different. Yes, okay, so wow, so you remember that. So that's the first time.
Uh-huh.
And everything went smooth, obviously. And
Yeah.
then when was the second time?
So then the second time, that kidney lasted till I was about 19 or 20. And then I did dialysis for about 2 years. And that dialysis was like my middle of my sophomore year of college to start of my middle of my senior year.
Okay.
And then at the end of my senior year, I got the transplant. And then I did 1 more semester, but only because Vince Young was the quarterback at Texas. No, I'm kidding. And we won the national championship. But no, it was a nice little timing that I needed an extra semester.
Wow. Okay, you said you were doing dialysis for 2 years.
Yeah.
Did you know during those 2 years, say, hey, Stephen, we're ready, you need to get another transplant? Were you on like a waiting list? Did you know?
Yeah. I got on the waiting list, 2.5 years prior, and you still kind of chug along for like 6 months, trying to prolong dialysis as long as possible, prolong getting on it. But yeah, I was on the list for probably about 2.5 years.
When you go on a list like that, do they tell you, Stephen, we may or may not find a donor? Or do they pretty much know just because they know, hey, we'll find a donor, but it may be X amount of years? Like, what do they tell you?
Yeah, it's more like that.
Okay.
The second, in that they're pretty confident they'll find you a kidney, but it's like, it's going to take, 4 or 5 years.
And when they say find you a kidney, again, I'm asking if these, by the way, any of these questions you want on here, I'll take off. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just asking you really as a complete novice. Kidney transplant, we'll talk about how you got the third one, but are you basically waiting for someone to, die and they're on a donors list?
Yeah, correct.
Wow,
okay. And that's, they, and we can certainly talk about it with the third, but they definitely would prefer a living donor. But with each transplant you have, you become a little bit more difficult to become a match for people.
Really?
Yeah. And so, I'm not a nephrologist, but you have antibodies. I have antibodies, right? Mm-hmm. I give you a kidney, now you kind of have another layer of antibodies.
Oh, wow. Never
Okay.
thought about that. Yeah.
So now you need a second one, or a second transplant.
Right.
You got to find somebody who has this unique set of antibodies that match your original and your mashup.
Oh, wow. So now the field is narrowed.
Right. So
how concerned were you? Do you remember? Were you married at the time, or dating, or whatever? At 19, your girlfriend, or
yeah. So my current wife, we began dating, I guess our senior year of college, while I was still going through dialysis. She knew my whole story, knew everything. So
you met her while you were going through dialysis?
No, we met in high school.
Okay.
We were always friends.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we started dating our senior year of college, and yeah, she's been through 2 transplants, and
dude, that's so. Here's to your wife, man.
yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah, because usually, the women. I'll make a quick little joke here, but I'm doing online dating now, and man, when you read their profiles, what they're looking for, they're almost some of them, not all of them. Some are looking like for the absolute perfect, pristine guy who, has all these things.
That's not me.
Well, and not that one thing. That one thing I see. Yeah, so your wife was, wow, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so you get that transplant about 2 years later. Do you remember, was it from someone who had passed away, or was it
Yeah.
It was, okay.
Yep.
Stephen, what is that like? You know that someone has donated,
Right. So it's interesting, and we can kind of talk about both, but like, to be very honest, my second one, I was 19, 20, 21, 22. There was a lot of like anger, to be honest. Like, why am I doing this? My buddies are on Lake Travis, on the party boat, and I'm in this dialysis chair. And it's like, oh, well, I did get the transplant, but now I have to social distance, a word that I knew far before 2020,
wow, yeah.
for 4 months after my transplant. And so I'm just sitting at home with my parents, while my buddies are, at the UT football game, or out, on 6th Street, or what have you.
Yeah.
So I was young and pretty immature, and regardless of what I went through and how grateful I should have been, it was more just like, God, like I have to do this again. And now, and so, which is like a total 180 to when I had my transplant 2 years ago, like,
Awesome. So we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that in part 2.
Yeah.
All right.